It's wild card weekend, and there is plenty of postseason action to take part in. But you're going to need to know which wide receivers you should start and sit. SI's fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano is here with that insight. Fab's receivers to start this week, who are they?
I'm starting Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown for the Baltimore Ravens. He has given you 13 or more fantasy points in 6 straight games. He had over 21 points last week against the Bengals, and he's got Tennessee this week. Their defense, Kaitlin, is awful against wide receivers. They've given up 22 touchdowns and the second most fantasy points to the position. DK Sportsbook also has the over-under here at 54.5, so this should be a high-scoring affair. Start Hollywood Brown. And I also like Diontae Johnson for the Steelers going up against the Cleveland Browns. Johnson finished the wide receiver season at number 21. He averaged nearly 15 fantasy points a game. He was sixth among wide receivers in targets. And the Browns, well, they have given up more fantasy points to home wide receivers than any team in the National Football League. So DJ should be in a smash spot this week.
Yeah, that's a stat you feel comfortable putting DJ in your lineup. But let's talk about the wide receivers you really just want to stay away from this week.
I'm fading Tyler Lockett, and I get it. He had a huge game last week, 33 fantasy points against the 49ers. Still, he had scored 12.3 or fewer points in his previous 5 games. That includes a 7.4-point effort against this week's opponent, the Rams, who have allowed the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and they've only allowed 11.5 points per game to slot receivers. So Lockett's a fade, and I'd also beware DK Metcalf going up against Jalen Ramsey. Speaking of the Rams, I'm fading Robert Woods. Last week, he had just 7.6 fantasy points in a game where John Wolford was under center. And if Jared Goff can't go this week, well, Woods is going to be on my bench again. This is also not a great matchup since week 9. The Seahawks have actually allowed the 9th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers after really being terrible against the position earlier on. So Seattle's getting better against wideouts, and Robert Woods is very likely to be without his number 1 quarterback.
All right, well, thank you for the insight we need to know for Super Wildcard Weekend. And guys, for you at home, for more insight and, of course, Sports Illustrated's award-winning weekly player rankings, make sure you guys get your membership to SI Fantasy Plus for just $14.99 a month.